In Illustrator, the type tool is a very important tool to be familiar with because whether you're creating a logo with some letters or infographic or some other kind of illustration or vector art, you're often using type or some kind of typography in it. So go ahead and open up a new file, and in this lesson you're going to learn about the type tool as well as what some of these other tools are and best practices when you're using the type tool. So go ahead and select the type tool, and you'll notice if you click and drag, it drags out an area that you can type in, right? So if I just type in some letters here, it acts like a text frame, almost like an InDesign. It just has this floating frame here, and if I click and drag the corner, then the text flows to the next line if I make it skinnier, and then it comes up to the first line if I make it wider, and so on. But if you notice, if I select the type tool again and just click and let go somewhere, and I'll just type in a word here, let's say we're creating a logo, and you'll notice now instead of changing the flow of the text when I click and drag the corner, it actually resizes the type for me, and it is distorting it vertically or horizontally. So I can hold shift, and that'll maintain the original proportion. And you look up here, we've got 162.87 points. So I didn't have to guess. I can actually just click and drag the corner, holding shift if we want, and then we can make it as large as we want. So what's the difference between those two? Well, basically that is the type tool or the area type tool. So if you click and drag with the type tool, it'll basically create an area to put the type in. If you use area type tool, you will have to insert some type into a shape. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's just go ahead and click and hold onto the type tool and go to area type tool. Now if I click anywhere, it gives me an error. Hey, you must click on a non-compound, non-masking path to create text inside a path. So what we need to do is you can create some kind of shape like, say, a circle or an ellipse, and then go to the area type tool, and then if I click inside it, it lets me type inside this shape, right? What's pretty neat though is you can also do custom shapes. So I can use the pen tool here, and I can use the area type tool, and you have to click right on the path here. So if I click inside, it won't work. I have to click right on the path, and there we go. Then it types it in there. And you can also use the direct selection tool and edit the corner after the fact. So I can click and drag that around and change the shape, and then I can double click inside there and insert some more text. Obviously that doesn't say anything, it's just some filler text that I'm putting in there. So you can move it around, and it's kind of like a text frame, but it's just a custom shape text frame that we have. So if you go back to the type tool, remember if I click and let go, I can type something out and then click and drag the corner to resize it. If I click and drag an area out like this, it's just creating an area to type in. So I can still resize this though. So just like as if I had created a new shape. I'm going to take the white direct selection tool, and I'm just going to click and drag the corner. And you'll notice now it's sort of a custom shape. It's not just a rectangle that I had originally. So what if you have the type tool and you click and let go and type something in here, make it larger, and you're like, you know what, I actually want to have a text frame here. How do I do that? Well, what you can do is if you look over to the right here, if you hover over that, it turns into a little symbol. If I click once, it will tell me, hey, double click to convert to area type. So what you can do is double click, and now it's an area type, right? So I can move around and resize the area where this text is going to be. So I can move it like that. It's almost like InDesign, it's like a text frame, right? You even have the little red plus sign, meaning you have more text to place. Now what if I wanted to resize this and without having to select the type and then changing the font up here like so? I'm going to edit undo. Well, you can actually convert it back to normal type. So if you double click over here again, and now it's normal type again. All right, and you can repeat the process. If I double click again, now it's a text frame, and you can still edit this and more. Now, of course, you can change the font, so you can click and drag over this and change the font up top to whatever we want. You can change the style of it. You can manually change the size here. And you can also left align it, center it, right align, and so on. And down here on the bottom of the Tools panel, you can see the fill and the stroke. So if I double click fill, you can change the color, and you can also change the stroke or the border. Let's make it a little bit larger so you can really notice it. All right, so that's a little bit too much, but you see how it works. Now some of these other tools like vertical type tool, vertical area type tool, these are basically the same thing as the type tool and also the area type tool, except it's vertical orientation. I'll show you what I mean. So if I go to vertical type tool, click and drag, you'll notice it's a sideways cursor anyway. And then I type in, let me make it smaller. I press Control A on the PC or Command A on the Mac. That selects all the copy in there, and then I can resize it. So that's a quick shortcut. As long as you have a cursor blinking in a text area, you can press Control or Command A and it'll select it all. And then we can change it. So if I just type it in, you can see it's top to bottom instead of left to right. You can also do the same thing but with a vertical area type tool. If you have a shape that we have drawn out, vertical area type tool, let me click on the path here, and that does the same thing. All right. Now what if you want to toggle back and forth between those? You can between that and normal type tool. So if I have the type tool selected, if you hold shift, it toggles to the vertical type tool. And likewise, if you have the area type tool, hold shift, it'll toggle to the vertical area type tool. And if you have those two selected, it'll shift back to the regular way. And then if you go to vertical, it'll shift back. It'll toggle back to the area type tool just by holding shift. And the next lecture, I'm going to cover type on a path tool, and there's also the vertical type on the path tool, same kind of thing, but it's vertically oriented instead of horizontal. And it's a pretty useful tool, especially when you're designing editorial layouts or posters. But really quick, before we go to the next lecture, I do want to cover this really quickly. The touch type tool. So if you click and hold on to the type tool and go down to the touch type tool, what is that where? Well, it says click on a character to select. So if I click a character, I can actually click and drag it up and move it around. And then I can click this next one over here and actually resize it. And I can click this one and I can click up at the top there and rotate it. And then click this next one. So you can resize, rotate, or reposition type. And it's not outlining it. We're going to go over outlining in a separate lecture, but this is just repositioning it, and it's still editable as far as being type. So if I click and drag over it, it will change the letter. All right, so we can still replace these letters with new letters even after moving them around. So you can customize the placement, the rotation, the size of individual letters even though they're in the same text frame, the same group here. So next I'll go over type in a path. We'll also get to why you'd want to outline text. If you're sending in Illustrator file to someone, they don't have the same font as you. We want to outline text, and also we can customize it a little bit more when we outline it as well. So I will see you in the next lecture. Thanks.